I'm just going to share a little bit of my story. Growing up, didn't have a name or a title for it, but I knew already that I believed in the concept of inclusion. I just didn't realize it until I joined Higher Dimensions back in 2000, 2001. I've always been a curious person, wanting to know how this thing called life works. As a child, I remember lying under a tall bush in my front yard, looking up at the sky intently. I was about 7 or 8 years old. And I boldly asked God, "Who are you?" In looking at the sky, trying to avoid the sun, and not noticing a rain cloud close by, I was expecting these white clouds to part, hoping to see a face looking back at me, smiling, saying, "Peekaboo." Well, as you probably guessed, that didn't happen. But instead, as I said, not noticing that rain cloud, what I got was a sprinkle of rain coming down on my face. I thought, it's a miracle, close enough. I remember running into the house to where my mother was doing laundry and telling her about this awesome, amazing event. She responded, "Okay, now go back outside and play." I promptly gathered up my younger siblings and set them down to explain this awesome event that just happened to me. Thus began my journey, my quest to find out what this is all about. One of my favorite movies is called The Wizard of Oz. Hey, with the name Dorothy, how can the girl go wrong? What I loved about the movie is the adventure, the journey that she takes her friends, actually they were family, to find her way back home. It speaks to the quote that is credited to Ralph Waldo Emerson that says, "Life is a journey, not a destination." Early on in my life, there were 6 words that became very important to me: who, what, when, where, why, and how. Much to my mother's chagrin, why became my favorite. Why this? Why that? And see, growing up in a large family of 9 children, and one of my sisters is here today, something we did, and I don't even know if she remembers this. Every night at dinner time, we would go around the dining room table, and our daddy would have us to say a Bible verse. See, I'm a pretty smart kid. I sat close to my daddy, hoping none of my other siblings would use my Bible verse to make me have to come up with another one. Mine was John 3:16, "For God so loved the world," and you know the rest. I sometimes wondered if my daddy was going to ask why we chose the verse that we did, because you see, I was ready for him. I was going to tell him because that love included me. And just like the raindrops that fell on my face that day, there had been other events that were significant to me. These events I locked away in the pages of my mind, not knowing when or how they may reappear, but knowing that someday they would. My pathway to higher dimensions was paved in such a way. I'm a Baptist. I grew up right here in Tulsa, the Bible Belt, and I had the pleasure of meeting some big name people in this pretty prominent world of religion. Now, I'm not going to try to impress you by name dropping, but very few really struck me the same way Bishop Carlton Pearson did. I'm a visual person. When I see something that's significant to me, it usually stays with me. So what intrigued me about higher dimensions was the message of inclusion. What baffled me was that it was a controversy. As I told you, or maybe you have already figured out, my life was one of inclusion. My parents always made room at the table for more people, even though we had a large family. If someone needed help, we always gave it. They showed me that we were in this all together. Now, my husband was in the military for 22 years. He's my high school sweetheart, and he's a Vietnam and Desert Storm vet, and he's one of my heroes. We were stationed in Spain a few years ago, quite a few years ago. Excuse me, I'm trying to get my page here. And during holiday times, he would invite his squadron over, usually telling me at the last minute. And it got to be so much that those people started inviting other people over. Our daughter Samantha was about 2 or 3 at that time, and she loved it. And she's here today, too. Because you know what? Even as today, she knows how to work a crowd. Our family became the closest thing to going to grandma's house. It didn't matter who you were welcomed. My husband once told me that he got that idea from watching my family. When our daughter was about 4 years old, we had moved to Las Vegas. The actual day we were moving into base housing, there was a knock on the door. When I opened that door, there stood a little blonde-haired, blue-eyed little girl who looked at me and said, "Do you have kids? Can they come out and play?" That was it. She didn't want to know who I was, where I was from. She didn't care if I was the purple people eater. All she wanted to know was, do I have kids? When I checked on my daughter and her later, I saw 2 little girls, one black, one white, with their arms rocked around each other's neck, calling themselves best friends from day one. Now, years later, I was a personal counselor at Louisiana State University in Alexandria, and I counseled several young gay men who were in anguish, who were in their own personal hell, because most of these young men were sons of ministers. What impressed me was that they were willing to talk to me, someone from Oklahoma in Louisiana. It was like being in a foreign land. But they were willing to talk to me about their personal struggle. My struggle was, what do I say to them? I wanted to have a word for them. I prayed, meditated, even slept on it. In my heart, all I heard was, tell them I love them. That's it. Plain and yet not simple. Because you see, I had to combat hell that they found themselves in. You're loved. You're included. Now, bringing it back to higher dimensions and Bishop Pearson, one of my sisters, the one that's here now, we attended a Wednesday night service. A friend of hers was giving their first message. After he finished, he said he wanted to personally introduce us to Bishop Pearson and Lady Gina. Of course, who's going to pass up that opportunity? Seeing how I've already told you that I met some big wigs in the religious world. And by the way, there's a man that I saw early on in my life that was involved in civil rights that I thought I would never get a chance to meet. I'll tell you about him in a moment. Getting back to my story, the Pearsons had just returned from being out of the country. They were tired, and I'm sure ready to go home. So my sister and I was not going to take up much of their time. But every step that he took down the aisle heading toward us, I saw a man that I described as going through a gauntlet of hands reaching out to him. He stopped to greet every person, took pictures, gave hugs and kisses, shook hands, all of that. And all that time, Lady Gina was trying to retrieve Julian and Majesty from under the benches, all the while apologizing to us. What impressed me was that he stopped and looked every person in their eyes as if to say, I see you. When it came our turn, it'd have been all right if he had just told my sister and I, I'm so glad to meet you both, shook our hands, gave us a hug maybe, and grabbed his wife and kids to get out of there. But he didn't. He stopped, looked us in our eyes, and I still remember, after 20 years, what he said to me. Before I could say a word to him, he said, you're either a singer or a talker. And my response was, I'm a talker who wished she could sing too. And I'm sure my sister probably said something like, we're all talkers. Anyway, the image in my head was that this man was the closest image that I had exhibiting the character of Jesus living today. One time, my husband and I encountered Bishop in the airport, and you have to excuse me, I get warm real quick. Bishop walked up to me, kissed me on my cheek, and said, hi, Dot Dot. He spoke to my husband and I for a few minutes, and he went on to catch his flight. My husband and I were catching our flight. We hadn't gone 10 feet when my husband stopped me and said, what's up with that? With this dumbfounded look on my face, I said, what are you talking about? He reminded me, now this man has known me for 50 years, and he was my high school sweetheart. My husband reminded me, you don't like being called Dot, Dottie, or Dot Dot. Well, laughing, all I could tell him was, it doesn't sound so bad when he says it. Even today, when he speaks here at All Souls, I still see it. Many of you will wait in line to just have a moment. I think I've got it figured out, though. I'm going to tell you. Although he and his family are great people, what is it? It's how you and I feel about ourselves when we're in his presence. It's more than just feeling welcome. It's feeling included. I imagine that's why people of Jesus' day rush to be around him, not because they have this notion of him saving all of them from hell, unless they thought he could save them from the hell they were already living in. But I imagine it was simply because he let all of them know you're included in this love. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Reverend Marlin, the other ministers here, and all of you at All Souls. When Bishop made the decision to go to Chicago, we didn't really want to let him go. But I, for one, felt that we needed to share the wealth. So off he went with my blessings, not that he needed it, but I also knew that we had something good, something real good right here at All Souls. That minister that I would not have thought that I would not have a chance to meet was Dr. John Wolfe. He was one of those significant moments in my life that had been locked away and reappeared when I came here to All Souls. He was someone involved in civil rights, and after meeting him, I am all the better for it. Bishop Pearson had assured us that leaving us here at All Souls, we would be in safe hands. Many of you already know about Reverend Marlin. He's a person of genuine compassion and love, so I wasn't worried. I also understood that your being the best you would not take anything away from me being the best of who I am. It will only enhance it. Something else that's worth mentioning is change is hard. It's true that starting out, New Dimensions already knew that, probably better than most. But then also, so did All Souls, because you were willing to include us. What we also know is that change is good. Once you determine the direction you want that change to go, because it's truly about the journey, as Dorothy already knew from The Wizard of Oz. There's a song that we often sing at the end of this service. It says, "You're my brother, you're my sister, so take me by the hand. Together we will work until we're done." There is no foe that can defeat us when we're walking side by side. As long as there is love, we will stand. Love is the spirit of this church. Thank you.
Would you harbor me? Would I harbor you? Would you harbor me? Would I harbor you? Would you harbor a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, a heretic, convict, or spy? Would you harbor a runaway woman or child, a poet, a prophet, a king? Would you harbor an exile or a refugee, a person living with AIDS? Would you harbor a tubman, a Garrett, a truth, a fugitive or a slave? Would you harbor a Haitian, Korean, or Czech, an immigrant on their way? Would you harbor a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, a heretic, convict, or spy? Would you harbor a runaway woman or child, a poet, a prophet, a king? Would you harbor an exile or a refugee, a person living with AIDS? Would you harbor a tubman, a Garrett, a truth, a fugitive or a slave? Would you harbor a Haitian, Korean, or Czech, an immigrant on their way? Would you harbor me? Would I harbor you? 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 Would you harbor me? Would I harbor you?
Good afternoon, church. Wasn't that a powerful song sung by powerful people? That song was written by Issei Barnwell, who sings with Sweet Honey in the Rock. Issei is a Unitarian Universalist, amen? Amen. She understood that question. Would you harbor me? Would I harbor you? You see, we understand harbor as a noun. That's a safe place. We can dock our watercraft and we can be assured that we're safe from the storm. But the harbor as a verb, we don't use that word very much as a verb. But it means to contain a feeling or a thought. Would you harbor this thought? Would you harbor the concept? It means would you consider it? Would you contain it? Would you give it a safe place to rest? You and I both know what's going on at the southern border is not right. We know that children crying for their mothers or fathers or loved ones, separated because of a policy, is not American. We have demonstrated as a country that we have hearts. So what is going on down there brings us to question, and so much has been happening around the country, the response to resist that kind of attitude and practice. And so people have organized to let others know that this is not American. This is not what we're about. So while I was thinking about this, At the same time, I am celebrating a birthday, and I am also acknowledging it has been 50 years since I graduated from high school. 50 years, church. Now, I know some of you all say, I'm longer. But you don't want to say that out loud. But 50 years, that's a time where you say, well, ordinarily I would not go to a reunion, but 50 years, let's see. So during this same time of harboring, thinking about that, I go to my Sapulpa High School 50th reunion banquet. Now, the reason why I went was not really because I said, oh, I'm anxious to see my former classmates. No, that was not it. One of our classmates is a Supreme Court justice in the state of Oklahoma. His name is Justice Tom Colbert. And Justice Colbert grew up just down the street from me. And we all grew up together, and he went on to become a Supreme Court justice. Amen. So he was receiving an award from the class of 1968. And so he telephoned a couple of us and said, I want you all to go to this banquet because I know you wouldn't be going otherwise, but I want to see some black people out there, so please come. Now, he said that because he was serious, church. Let me tell you a little story about Sapulpa. Sapulpa integrated peaceably, they say, in 1960. But frankly, what happened was a tornado came through the town and destroyed the black part of town, including the school, on May 5th, 1960. And John Wolfe talks about that date because I believe he was doing something here at the church. He had just arrived and there was something going on. And he said, wow, a tornado in Oklahoma. I just got here. Well, that was us. That was the May 5 tornado in Sapulpa. And after it destroyed where black folks live, of course, the little black kids could not go to school. And this is May 5th. So, just roughly about a month more of school was left. And so the brand new high school reserved for white kids was completing construction. And no one other than workers had been in that school building. But they said, we'll let the little black kids go in if they promise not to touch the walls. But we'll let them go in and they'll finish out the school year. And so that's what happened. We went in and finished out the school year. Meanwhile, when September was getting closer, our school had not been completely renovated and certainly not renovated enough to handle 1st through the 12th grades like it had been. So the generous people who make these kind of decisions said, we'll just move the 10th, 11th, and 12th grades of Booker T over to our brand new high school. So we will quietly desegregate, which they did quietly in 1960. Of course, quiet desegregation means no one knows you're there. They ignore you. You may raise your hand in class and you're not called upon. No clubs will honor your admission. And certainly you are not in that good old cool spirit. Now, if you ran the ball or dribbled the ball or shot the ball, oh yeah, you can play on the team. But that's about it. So in 1960, that's what happened. By the time we were ready to go into 10th grade, our 9th grade class was the last 9th grade class at Booker T because they said, well, it's been 5 years. Let's integrate the junior high school. So we'll just take the 7th, 8th, 9th, and we'll just put them over there. So we were the last 9th grade class. And so when we walked into that school, we understood what was going to happen. You were going to be ignored. But we had been included a long time ago in the 1st grade. We were told we were somebody, and our class knew that. We knew it because we had great teachers who told us, don't let anyone tell you you are less than. You are somebody. So by the time we got there, 10th grade, this little boy named Gerald, he went to the cafeteria where the enrollment was, and there was a sign that said, all band members report to the band room to pick up your music. And so he walked in and said, I'd like to have first E flat alto saxophone music, please. And the band director said, well, what is your name? Well, my name is Gerald L. Davis. Well, Gerald, I don't know you. Did you go to Booker T? Yes, I did. Well, you see, Gerald, I need to hear you play before I can give you that music because it's earned, you know? Okay, fine. Do you have a saxophone? No. Okay, well, here's one right here. And here's the music, play that. The music said Oklahoma. Now, Gerald knew how to read by ear. He could play by ear. But reading music, not so much. And so he looked at the music and looked at the notes and said, I can play this. I know how Oklahoma goes. And I played that, and the band director said, well, Gerald, that was fine, but that's not what that music says. And you need to be in remedial band. Now, remedial band was for those band members who didn't quite do it. They were, for whatever reason, not quite making it. And the junior high band members who were not quite making it. And so, though they had remedial band on second hour, well, Gerald went to that every day in September to April because he wanted to play in the band. By April, the band director said, Gerald, you have read all the books we got. You can read music. You are ready for the high school band. Well, bring it on. And I was ready. I did well. And I did well because I wanted it really badly and I thought I could, but I had a great band director who encouraged me, who said, yes, you can. Now, we had heard, yes, you can, like I said a long time ago. We had great teachers who told us, yes, you can. So I was one of those kids that believed that, you know? And so, yes, I was in the band and I was in the student council and I was in the National Honor Society and I was like all that because I thought I was all that. You know, it's a little brat. You know, that's what he was. But the thing about it, church, is that some folks needed to have reassurance. They needed to have someone saying, okay, I don't know you very well, but I know enough of you that I believe you can, and I'm going to include you in this. I had another teacher who did just that, Barbara Armstrong. She was the English teacher, and she encouraged me, and when I raised my hand, she called on me, and she not only said good work, but she told the rest of the class, Gerald got this. Gerald's good. He's a thinker. And so, you know, I felt pretty good. You know, yes, I am. That's what I am. But church, there are some folks who didn't have that. They didn't have that. Now, Barbara Armstrong was at this banquet for the Sapulpa High School alumni. And when I saw her, I said, oh, Barbara, I'm so glad you're here. You know, you were so encouraging to me. And she said, Gerald, you were a good student. And then she turned to the rest of the people and said, this is official. I'm telling you, Gerald was the teacher's pet. In case you didn't know. And so, you know, I had that kind of support. But there were others who didn't, church. There were other folks who, when they would raise their hand and wouldn't be called on, they got discouraged. There were others who said, I'm not going to run for any office because no one's going to vote for me. There were others who just kind of gave up and they went through school. They graduated, but it was not, as one friend of mine said, man, it was a blur. High school was a blur because it just wasn't inclusive. That's that word again. Well, here it is, some of the things that happened, church, and I'm just going to tell you, they're not joking. It really wasn't. The Supreme Court Justice said, you know, it's just two of y'all here, but we need to get the whole crew together. So because he's a member of the Summit Club, he said, we're going to go up there and I'm going to treat everybody to a banquet up here. So we had 11 of us who had graduated in '68 who are black. And we were all in there together talking about our good old days, right? Well, I found out some things I didn't know. I knew about Mr. Bright, my band director, and Miss Armstrong, my English teacher. But that's all I thought were the good teachers. The rest were, you know, they were just there. Well, folks told me about how some of the teachers had helped them. One person said, Miss Magilton, who taught biology, came to two of us and said, you all are making a D. You will not make a D in my class. So after school, every day at 5:30, I want you in this room and I'm going to be your tutor. And you're going to pass this course. And they did. They did well because that teacher committed to help that student. She saw that student as her way to harbor that student. Let me harbor that person. And she did. She reached out beyond the usual barriers that separate us. Well, it wasn't just her. There were others who I found out that they were other teachers who were doing similar kinds of things, trying to help students. And then there was the teacher who said to the three young men in shop class, do you all want to go to the courthouse to see how that works? And they said, yeah, we'll get out of school. Let's go to the courthouse. And they went to the courthouse. And at the courthouse, that's where the secretary sit, and there's a jury room. Come on over here and stand right here and see that glass, just look straight ahead. It was a lineup, church. These three young men with a lineup because someone had stolen or robbed a bank in Sapulpa, and they said, and it was a black person who had done it, and they said, let's get these guys and they'll be part of the lineup. Now the thing is, church, they're all juveniles. And the second thing is, what if the guy had misidentified and said it was him, this student? And with jury system saying, yeah, they got him, sent him on to prison. What if the Supreme Court Justice said he was one of those three guys? He said, I didn't know really what had happened until later on in adult life. I'm in the armed services, and I realized they had us in a lineup. No permission from anybody. So there were those things too, church, going on. But the little things are the ones that you hold on to. How certain people did, in fact, embrace you to give you that understanding of being part of something bigger. We are in this situation right now. We understand that what is going on in this country is not American, it's not human, it's not moral. We are a people of values, and that's what we need to stand on. My favorite conservative, you all know this because I always talk about him when I do talk about conservative. His name is David Brooks, and he writes editorial for the New York Times. And David Brooks wrote an editorial recently when he was talking about the difference between those folks who would say, yes, let's separate children from their parents, and others who would say, this is not who we are. He said the folks who say yes are people who consider interests first before anything else. And then the other was consider values. So you have values versus interests. Yeah, interests in the sense of this is mine because they start with a scarcity idea. This is mine because there's not enough to share. This is mine because you may take it. Ooh, you're a bad person. I need to label you bad so I can always look at you with some hesitation and trepidation. I don't think you deserve to be close to what's mine. Then you have the value person who says, this is all of us. This land is your land and my land. This is not just for us. But the other guy that's thinking of scarcity and thinking there's bad people all around, that person thinks that you're after him. So therefore they're threatened and they're fearful and they do stupid things and say, I was fearing for my life. See, that's a person who is only interested in self-interest. They're not thinking about, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. They're not thinking like that. They're not thinking past me, mine. That political, economic, and cultural self-interest, that's what's at stake. David Brooks wrote, not just Reverend Gerald. David Brooks said, y'all, this is what is going on. We got these small-minded people in charge who are thinking behind every door, there's somebody out to get them. Don't you understand every time you hear folks talk about fear, understand that their next response is mine. You're fearful because of something that's mine. But that's not where God gave us. And we always talk about how God gave us capacities. God didn't say, these folks over here can have it all, and these folks, no. So those people at that high school were very self-interested. They didn't have values in mind. And what values we talking about, Reverend Gerald? We're talking about the inherent worth and dignity of every being. Inherently, you didn't have to do anything. God put divinity inside of you. God said, you mine, right? God said, there is no living up to nothing. I got you. You don't have to be and pretend and try it. I got you. Therefore, you are free to choose. You are free to be the best you can be because you ain't proving it to anybody. I gave it to you. It's all yours. That's grace. So here we come that this value that I'm talking about speaks louder than my little stingy self-interest. The value says, Gerald, open your hand, brother. If you open your hand, something may fall in it. If you're just holding it up like that, nothing can get in that hand. So we got to open it up. That's what the church is called to do. The church is called, as David Brooks said, elevate the values, because that self-interest thing will keep us down here. But we can resist by coming that way. And let me tell you something, church. When this church became desegregated, integrated, imaginative, wholesome, and universal, when this church moved in that direction, a lot of folks were hesitant. Now, we know that. They were a little hesitant because they were saying, well, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to get taken away from me. But some other folks, though, said, open the hand. You might receive something good. This wasn't the first time within the Unitarian Universalist tradition that had been tried. I'm reminded by reading my UU World of some history. You see, in 1948, there was a lot of desegregation going on, early desegregation, other services and that sort of thing. Well, James Luther Adams is a professor at Meadville Lombard Seminary in Chicago. And he's a professor doing good work. And he's also on the board of the Unitarian Church right across the street from Meadville. That minister, Lester Pennington, said to his good friend, James Luther Adams, it's time to desegregate this church. We need to open our doors to the people around us. We say we serve everyone. We need to have everyone in here. So James Luther Adams said, I got your back. Let's do it. So they had a big church meeting, church. And I'm here to tell you, there were folks that said, not now. This is not the right time. And so they railed and they talked all into the night. All into the night, they were saying yes and no, back and forth. Finally, everybody's tired. It's past midnight. James Luther Adams rose and he said to the person who had been saying the most against opening their doors, he said, my friend, what is the purpose of this church? And everybody in the room was quiet. And the guy stood. He thought, and then he said, the purpose of this church is to change people like me. And he voted. He said, let's go on and open these doors. And they desegregated. 1948, let black folks in. The purpose of the church is to have us go through a transformation, a change. We call it metanoia. Change your mind, change your way of thinking, move beyond what is the orthodox. You know what heresy means? We know heretic and all that bad word. It means choice. When you choose to move outside the mainstream of orthodoxy, when you choose to move past that into a place where you can build together with someone else. I was chairman of the board for Habitat for Humanity, the first iteration of that here in this town. And we learned at Habitat the theology of the hammer. The theology of the hammer is when you're building with someone, it doesn't matter if they're Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, a Unitarian, a convict. It doesn't matter if they're all those things that would separate us from the other. Because you're building together, you begin to talk about nails and screws, and before you know it, you're talking about who you are. And there's a relationship that begins to build because you're building. That's how things change. That's how we change. You cannot build by ignoring. You cannot build by disregarding. You're building because you are in relationship with the other person. I feel like singing. You hear that bass? It's moving. We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way. Feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. Everybody, we're building. I'm building a new way. We are building a new way. Feeling stronger every day. Peace and freedom is our cry. Come on. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom. Peace and freedom.
Hey, we're so happy you're visiting with us online today. We love connecting with people all across the country and around the world, sharing our powerful message of love beyond belief.
There's something new happening here. You can now join All Souls as a virtual member. Our virtual membership is designed for friends who live outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and who want to engage with All Souls in a meaningful way.
You can be part of an expanding family, a global family really, wherever you are. If you live in Oklahoma,
Ohio,
or Orange County, California,
Canada,
or Cameroon. By becoming a virtual member, you'll be able to deepen your connections with members and friends here in Tulsa and with members wherever you are.
Each week, you'll receive special All Souls content tailored for you, our virtual members. Virtual members have access to pastoral care, to personal prayers, and also receive invitations to exclusive web events.
You can learn more, and if you're ready, you can become a virtual member today by visiting allsoulschurch.org/virtual membership.
We're grateful our ministries are having a positive impact on your life, and we want to share the good news of love beyond belief with more and more people. So no matter what, we need your support to keep this ministry growing and thriving, so please consider making a gift today. You can do so by texting
Love BB for Love Beyond Belief to 73256 or simply visit our website. You are a blessing in our lives. May you be blessed
and be a blessing.